Welcome to Albion TV presents the AO Daily Show, your source of real news in an unreal world, keeping up to date on the latest news, events, and the great community of Albion Online. Today is Wednesday, the 30th of September, 2020, and I am your host, the Shozen One. And joining me today, as always, my co-host, Bogul.
I thought you were going to say Zerfaxx there for a while, but hi guys. We don't have a lot of time. This is a long interview.
Yeah, so we have to go through this intro real quick. We're interviewing Zerfaxx of Elevate, the city fight Shotcaller. It's almost an hour long. When this interview is over, we're transitioning right over to the next city fight because we have one at 20 UTC. I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you enjoy this interview. Bogul, why don't you just start playing it?
All right, let's go.
Welcome to Albion TV's interview series. I am the Shozen One, and I am joined by Bogul and Zerfaxx, the city shot caller for Elevate. Zerfaxx, do you want to let the people know who you are and why you're on the show today?
Sure. I'm Zerfaxx. I guess I lead the city team for Elevate. We're pretty dominant, as you can see right now. We control 5 of the cities, not 6, because we have various allies that we like to please, such as Jungle. But we still maintain the most dominant city team, I would say, in history. Others might debate that topic, but I would say we're the strongest. Yeah, I can't really take credit for all the stuff I do, though. You know, you can only do it with the best team that you can find, and that's what we found. And that's like the only reason why you can be this dominant in a way, is that you play with your friends and you get the experience with your friends. You know, you always carry that with you, and that's pretty much the only way you can win. You can only do it with your friends.
Okay, interesting. I that's not exactly what I expected you to say, but I have to say, you are definitely the most dominant team we've seen in city fights. The last time we saw any group dominate like this, it was 2 teams that have merged into one and are now facing off against you guys, and you are shrekking them day in and day out as they come at your cities. So I will give that to you guys. Elevate seems to have the most dominant city force we have ever seen. Now, do you feel like there's a reason for that other than just playing with your friends? Do you feel like there might be some sort of reason, as Elevate was built a certain way, right? We'll go to that.
Yeah.
Elevate was built with 5v5 teams in mind. They chose and brought in many players with very high skill 5v5 matches under their belt. And then they took over the cities and have just dominated the cities, as well as done a very good job overall in the Crystal Leagues.
Yeah, I think a lot of guilds are built like that. You know, they take the best 5v5 players they can find, or, a group of 5v5 friends, and they make a guild. That's been the case for, I would say, quite a lot of guilds in this game. But I would say this is a very special case. Like, at the time when we formed, I would say we had probably about 80% of the teams that would be, actively crystalling and, just actively playing the game. We were a very strong player base. We played the game a lot. We played with each other, and we just really enjoyed the game, hanging out with each other. And that, to go about through history a little bit, I kind of met them in TC and Take Care.
Mm-hmm.
And, we just played with each other, and we had fun GvGing and crystalling, making pugs with people. Just like the group of players we had, we could always just pug whatever and find a good pug, because all of us were such good players. And we were just, TC was going through a rough time. I wouldn't call them the best ZVZ guild at that time, obviously. Like, I don't think anyone would say that, but they were still very good players, and we just had to find our way, I would say. And that's where Elevate comes in. We knew we had that like power to be number one. Like, we knew we had that in us. I don't want to say we, because I wasn't really at the start of making Elevate. I wasn't really fully on board. So I'm not going to say we, but the people, my friends that wanted to make the guild, I would say that they were some of the top players in the game.
Mhm.
And they, they had this project that they've always wanted to make, like a guild made with their friends that they had control over. I think that's a really important part too, that they had control over, and work with each other, people that they can trust and stuff like that. Because we've all been through, rough patches, or gone through some undesirable people that we don't like, that backstab us, stuff like that. And it's just, you want to get away from that. You want to go with the people you can trust. And I would say that's how Elevate really formed. It formed, to go a little bit through like the time of it. It was like we were in TC, we dropped to Gone Fishing, I guess, to do the cities, and then we went to Elevate, and that's where we are now. Pretty much, I would say that's the whole timeline.
Okay. And let's go into your history a little bit here, because like you said, you did play in TC for a while. You said you've been here since season 4?
Yeah, I actually played on release. I played for like a decent amount of time. I played on release when, there was a lot of people were playing at the time. There were, a lot of people. But I quit, I would say like 2 months after release, because I'm a big Dota player. I was pretty high ranked at that time in Dota 2, so I was pretty invested into that game. But I eventually came back to Albion, I would say around late season 4 into season 5. So once I started playing the game again, I joined this guild, Phrasing, who was, they were known for having their 5v5 team and not much else, right? They had that.
Well, they're known for a lot. They're known for hanging out on the far east coast and far west coast.
West Coast, yeah.
All the way over there in Anglia, and dominating their local competition, but never moving anywhere or facing anybody who was of their caliber as far as a guild.
Yeah. It was which is a really good strategical way to go about things. They make a lot of money from,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say sitting, but they sat there. I don't want to say the bad connotation behind sitting, but they held those territories for a while, and they made their home there. And there's a lot of new players, and a lot of people learned a lot in that guild, I would say. You can see, this doesn't really come from my time, but you can see the Surf, Title,
Mm-hmm.
those guys. I believe they came from Phrasing. Some good community members that came out of that guild. Some of them still play.
No, a lot of them still do.
Yeah.
I always felt that Phrasing did a great job of winning the game and a terrible job of winning Reddit.
Yeah, we did have some propaganda. There was one city fight in Phrasing that I remember. It was against, I think, Blue Army, and we got completely stomped. It was bad. It was really bad. But that was a good time, and I used some propaganda for that, just to have a little fun. But
let's start talking about the city fights, because that's what you have become really well known for. You have been part of some of the best city fight teams that have come along. When did you start doing the city fights, the 20v20 city fights?
So like I said, I started that. I got my first experience in Phrasing doing that one city fight, and I wouldn't say that really did much for me. That kind of just, I wouldn't say that got my foot in the door. I would say that it just showed me how powerful one team could be, and how easy they can just kick you aside and be like, oh, let me just kick this rat out of the way. It's just business. You just got to show up and get it done. But after that, I think my first actual city fight was in June, I think. So my history was that I was in Phrasing. There wasn't much content left to be had there, not much GvG content like 5v5, stuff like that. But I saw this new guild, June, that was, they took a lot of, remember when the map doubled pretty much back when, the old continents, Anglia, Cumbria, Mercia, they doubled the size of the map. And June pretty much took like all of that. So I was like, wow, this guild, they must be pretty good because they're taking all this territory. So I thought, I'll probably get some content there. So I joined that guild, and I did. I got a lot of content from there, a lot of 5v5 content, and everybody was 5v5ing at that time because there were so many new territories. And you spend a lot of time in that guild, and eventually, what comes next? You're like, You have all these Terries, you're defeating all these guilds, you're just having a good time. It's the city fights that come next, right? Like that's, in my eyes, that's like the end of the end game. It's the mix of like GvG and ZvZ. I know a lot of people say that it's like the mix of those two types of content into one, because it meets somewhere in the middle between numbers wise, and there's, like maps. The map is like, it's like layout with chokes and stuff somewhat, and there's also wide parts, open areas, somewhat similar to a open world ZvZ,
Mm-hmm.
but also having elements of a 5v5.
Yeah, it's fought like a ZvZ, but you need to have skills of a 5v5 player to recognize the actions of your opponent and respond accordingly.
Yeah, I would put that exactly. That's how I would describe it exactly, pretty much. And that's why we're so strong, I would say. But the part about June, that was the end game. That's how we saw the end game, because it wasn't really a ZvZ guild. I did lead ZvZs in that guild just for fun, but it wasn't an actual ZvZ where people are, coordinating on TeamSpeak. They're like, okay, quartering chokes or maps, whatever, cutting stuff off. It was more just like having fun with like a group of 40, 60 guys, whatever, and just looking for objectives somewhere or pacifying war camps, stuff like that. It wasn't anything serious, but I still led ZvZs there, and it's the city GvGs are a mix between that, and that's where somebody that has that experience of both ZvZs and GvGs, that's where they really shine, is in the city GvGs, is what I would say. That's what I had a lot of experience in, I would say, because that's what I would like pretty much only do. That's my only interest in playing this game, is 5v5s and ZvZs.
And during that time, you guys started really taking over the cities at the time. Weren't you fighting against Money Guild, I believe?
Yeah. Well, I think there was... I'm not really sure the backroom deals between this, because I wasn't involved in that very much. I believe Blue Army had some cities. Sex with X had one city, I think. And June had a city. I think that's how the deal went. I'm not sure. But yeah, the only real enemy was Money Guild, I would say. That was actually the only enemy. Money Guild. They're a really good enemy, I would say. They're like the end game. They have such good players, and they're respectable. They've been here forever. You can't get much better than that. They're just... You can always expect them to be like the final boss. That's why they're so respected, because they have Mercia, they have the town plots, all that time, they've held that forever, and they've just always been there. And that's even to us. That was... We took June out right away. It was like not even a big deal of that fight, of that war, I guess, in quotes. I would say that Money Guild Final Order at the time of us fighting, they were in Final Order at that time.
Oh, so you're going now to when you were in Elevate and taking over the cities.
Yeah, the side point there is like they were just always the end boss. They would always be the ones that were most persistent. They would never quit until a pretty long time, I would say, until a lot of money was spent. But the thing about going in June was I did get a lot of experience in there too. Like 5v5 experience, 20v20 experience, stuff like that. Like stuff that's invaluable that you can't really find in another guild, right? Like what other guild could you say did that many 20v20s? Like it's either Money Guild or June. And to that experience, there's a lot of people that can claim that they've done GvGs or city fights in the past or whatever, but those were completely different games. I've had, as you know, I've made teams of I've made up to 3 teams to handle triple launches before. And I've had to teach a lot of people how to city fight. And a lot of people have this like, this idea of how to play city fights, but they don't know how to play them right. Like that they'll have like outdated information of how to play them, and you gotta like train people how to not do that anymore, how to play properly. It's like people watch the city fight, like you can watch it on Albion TV, but until you actually play, you don't like gain that experience that's like drilled into your head.
Do you want to update us, or do you have a few tips for the listener? What's different now than before, or just any sort of advice for getting into that scene?
Well, I don't want to like reveal stuff about how we play differently, but I can say some general things. Like before, back then, they did the 10-10 in the lanes. Excuse me. where they would, send 10 people to the side lane on both sides, and they would brawl out and fight. They would kind of ignore. This was going way far back, not very recent, but they would like fight on the side lanes and kind of ignore mid and leave that up to whoever wins the side, and then they would flank and stuff like that, which is like not very close at all to how they're played now. It's more like, how can I say without like revealing stuff?
Well, I mean, I can do it from my layman's perspective. I see that they fight over mid to gain control of it. Once you gain control of mid, you push to one of the side bridges and then use the T to force your opponents to come down one lane while you control 2 lanes. And whoever can control 2 lanes of the fight is able to get a flank off on their opponent. And that allows them to really free up additional members to do the rat capping. Because if you can control the flank, you don't have to worry about brute forcing your way in with greater numbers, which is what you guys have been doing with your opponents, forcing them to brute force their way in and push down. And once they push down one of those lanes, you can collapse in over top with your other flank off the tee.
Yeah, that's a pretty good way of putting it. You're pretty close with that, I would say. Yeah, without revealing too much, yeah, that'd be good. The flanking is not as important as it used to be. I would say it's more of holding your ground and holding chokes, I guess, is like the most important thing. And we've just excelled at that. We have so much experience at this point of doing that. You can even see it from the your cast that we're excellent at holding those chokes, and we know what we're doing. We know every single thing that's happening, and we just take that into account, and that's just how we're so good. We just realize this stuff, and that's not all it takes. Obviously, there's macro and micro decisions to be made on everyone's level, not just mine, not just stuff that I say. It's individual skill comes into play. It's not just the main caller doing it. And that's when you become that top team, is when everybody's doing that while you have somebody making these decisions for you, is when you reach another level. And I think we've easily reached that level. It's fair to say at this level, yeah.
Okay. One of the things that I've noticed, and maybe this is just me looking from afar, is it seems like the difference between Elevate right now and the Black Order team that has been assaulting you is it seems like you guys are all under one banner. You guys are all using one shot caller who knows what they're doing and gives a very clear message of what to do. And I don't know if we're seeing that from your opponent, because they are a number of different guilds who have joined together under one flag to try to work towards a common goal. And I don't know if they have a common shot caller and a common set of orders. Like they're all getting the exact same orders with the same level of, I don't know, like belief that they're doing the right thing.
Yeah, I could see that too. Like I study the videos quite a lot. Like I watch your guys' stream. I watch other people's streams. I watch my own players' perspectives. Most importantly, I watch Exion's stream. But I don't know if you've seen the clips, but he goes nuts. But I watch all these things and get all the perspective, and you just learn from that. And the point about them not having a main caller, I guess you can see that without the, like even if you're not even listening to the comms, you can see that they're a little disorganized still, that they're not playing that well together. These guys, like, they don't have that synergy that we have. And it really shows that they're not on point. And I mean, to get into it, some people would say that they're getting more points every single time they launch, every single time they fight, which is not technically true. I mean, I guess they've gotten more points, they've gotten more kills, but there's reasons for this. And if people don't realize the reasons why they're getting this, it just defeats the whole purpose of like any progress they make. They're not understanding why they're doing better, which is like will always be their weakness. And they're not doing better because they're not winning in a way that they have to. The way they're winning is that not to be too rude, but they're not winning a mid fight, they're not winning a side lane fight. So they have to look for a way to win these fights. And the only way they do that is by throwing us off our positioning, which which they've done a few times, and it's done by faking us out, because I like to say this, that they've set tent so many times against us that we get faked out by it. So we see them
And
rotating.
so you overextend yourself, bringing you guys out of position because you're
So, yeah.
expecting the fight to be farther back. Okay.
Yeah, it's a little cocky to say that, but I don't think so, because it's true in a way, because we look for the rotation and we see them rotating, and then they fake us out, and then they come back to their choke. Yeah, earlier than what we would have gotten there if we just committed to a choke. And so they gain that little foothold, and then they have cooldowns earlier, and then they just, they get a little lucky. That's all.
Okay. As far as I'm going to go back a little bit in history, because I do remember that when
Yeah.
Blue Army was very good at the city fights, that was one of the tactics they used, was to try to put people into position to make you leave the important chokes. Like I always look back at Mr. Flacco and his using the bow on the western push. He would stand on the western bridge that doesn't really go anywhere and force people to come over to him through the mid. And by doing that, it would relieve pressure on the western side, and BA could push up and get that western point all the time. There isn't really a mirrored bridge on the other side on the east to pull that same thing off. Maybe it's because of view, but I don't see anybody doing that as much as they used to, by putting people into non-reachable areas where you have to come to them to fight them and really break your hold. We're not seeing Black Order do that to you guys, make you guys break your hold by putting people into odd positions where you have to fall out of your position to go get them. The only time, like you said, is that you're seeing it is when they go to a fake rotation. And by making you bring your forces to another location, they're getting that same benefit. But it's not a consistent one. And it does, when you rotate properly to meet them on that, it does put them into a negative position. Like if you can get to the rotation before they do, their whole movement was wasted.
Yeah, I want to say, like, you can see too, you could see the point differential, like it's huge. Like it was, I say this almost after every fight. Like, guys, this should have been a 180 to 0. Like this, we shouldn't have screwed up here. This, we should have seen this and made this 180. Like it's a little embarrassing that we got so low on points, but yeah, it's because they pull themselves off that, and they're in their attempt to pull us off the choke, in order to gain more foothold inside of a choke. But these tactics, like, they're not going to work unless you win the fight. At the end of the day, you have to win the fight.
Mm-hmm.
And they struggle with that in like every sense, in every macro decision. They just struggle with that, and it's not necessarily their fault. It's more like we're just so good at like playing with each other, on top of being really good players, that it's just too difficult. And not to like ruin anyone's chances of ever owning a city ever again, but you're gonna have to beat us in that front. You're gonna have to beat us at a micro level and at a macro level, and it's really hard because we're so good at it.
I have to agree with you on point of that, because on the micro level, I think they're probably just as good as you guys. They all have like their skills down. They're all very good players. You're all very good players. I would say you're all similar in skill at the hitting the right button at the right time. The difference seems to be at that macro level of knowing how to be in the right place on the field at the right time. Like they're just not positioning themselves in a way that's going to let them win a fight. Like if you don't position yourself correctly in these city fights, you're going to lose.
Yeah, like you're just going to lose. That's just the way it is. And I can understand the argument of saying, we're similar levels, or they're better or something at a micro level. I've watched your stream. I've heard people say that, and I find things wrong with that, but I don't really blame you guys for saying that stuff, because they've been in the Crystal tournament. They've gotten first and second place. They're obviously respectable players. They're obviously good players, but we're also top players too. It's nothing to to write off, because I was in a top level team too. Like I could have been in, funny story, I could have been on level 19, but we got a no-show on season 8, I believe. So there's that. But it's obviously not really relevant because that's kind of far away. But it's just to the point that there's the potential there. We're not bad players by any sense. We're not comparable to them. Like there's players on our team that I think are just the best players flat out in the game. Like I would say people like, Geminex, Chicken, Uraz, Tamashi, Dungeon Realms, like all these players, they're just like the best at their role, and I don't think they can really be outclassed. Like I've never seen another player outclass Geminex on melee DPS. He like always tops damage and stuff, and I don't know. These are just really good players, and it's not really debatable on their skill because they have proved it so many times why they're so good. Like yeah, like I don't think anyone would argue that Geminex is probably top 3, top 1 melee DPS, or I don't a lot of people say I'm the best Frost, not to brag or anything, but it's just the fact that we're just some of the best players, and we just show that in 20v20. We may not show that in 5v5, but to be fair, I think there's other reasons other than just straight up skill of why we haven't really shown that. But I think we have a very consistent player base, more consistent than theirs. That I don't know, that that the argument can be made for that we're just better.
Well, I would say you have some proof of that in that you have not lost a city fight yet. You guys have been very consistent in showing up with the same teams over and over again. And it's been very impressive, I don't know, like the streak that you guys currently have. It's one of the best streaks we've ever seen as far as defending the cities. And I don't think it's important to say which one of you guys has the best skill when it comes to using your skills in a 1v1 or 5v5 sense, because it's clear in a 20v20 sense, you guys are the best. So I don't think it matters to, like, because we have seen these other guys fight at different levels. And yes, in some other instances, they show themselves to be the best. In 5v5, the cap game is huge. It's absolutely, you need to know your cap game, and the teams that know that cap game and that rotation speed are going to win, which is similar to what's going on here in the city fights even. You might have a close fight kill-wise. We haven't seen one yet. No, I'll put that out there. We haven't seen one where it's been real close yet. But if you did, you could still win it by having a better cap game, because the cap game is even more important in the city fights.
And that's just another barrier that you have to beat us down in, which on top of all the other things, you have to beat us at the cap game, which I don't see, unless you like copy us and do it better than us. I don't see a way in how you do it.
Okay.
I mean, there could be a strategy, that I'm not even thinking of, but this is what works, and we're going to keep on doing it. And, I mean, we adapt too. That's also one of our strengths, that we always adapt, and we're always thinking of new stuff. We have these minds on our team that think of this stuff, and we talk about this stuff all the time of what could be good, what could not be good, what's good, what do we take out, what do we put back in, stuff like that. You always have to be thinking about this stuff. The second you get too complacent in your place is when you start losing. And I saw that too, that we were doing a little worse and worse every time. But I have to kick this stuff out. Like you have to change stuff, and you have to keep doing that in order to win. And I think that's what happened with people like from Blue Army or like CIR, who used to own cities too. Yeah, that they never really adapted.
Blue Army definitely didn't adapt. I will give you that one.
They like to do this thing where they play Galatines in city fights, and people, you don't know how many people have suggested that to me. Oh, why don't you play Galatines in a city fight? And it's like, I'm just, every time I hear that, I just sigh, because I know how bad it is, and I've seen how bad. There's some weapons like that too that people will suggest and say like, why don't you play that in here? And I'm just like, okay, yeah, I'll think about it.
Do you control what everybody on your team uses?
Yeah, I'm in full control of that. In fact, I get mad if people try to swap stuff and bring stuff out without saying anything. Yeah. Because I do all the re-gears for people. I organize everything, do all the attendance.
So you think of these players kind of like a deck of cards then, we'll use Magic the Gathering as an example here. You have to have everybody using the right thing so that you can get your combinations and you can have the backups you need in the appropriate time. Like you only have so many slots. A wasted slot on like a Galatine pair, for example, means that you can't have another Locust.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. I don't necessarily. I think you're giving me too much credit for the controller because it's builds that also people suggest and say like, yo, what if I brought this thing? Or like, this sounds good. Like, what if we run this? And then we talk about it, think about it, and was like, okay. And I'm like, okay, yeah, sure, that sounds good. Let's do it. It's more stuff like that. It's more not. It's not me banging my gavel and saying, oh, we have to do this. It's more like talking about it, and I think that's the important part about um, like leading anything is that you have to listen to the other people that you're playing with, or listen to the people you're with, because they're the experienced ones in their roles. That's what I always say. I say, X tank, what did you feel about this item? Like, could we swap this? Or Y healer? Like, what can we change? Like, stuff like that. You just always have to adapt. Is the point.
Speaking of people having things to say, how did you feel when Goof was interviewed?
Yeah, so I had a few interjections there because there's some clearly wrong things with it. When if somebody's looking at the battle boards and seeing stuff, like seeing the roster, seeing the people that show up, or seeing how the fights went, it's not like it's just wrong. It's not the right thing that happened. And I wrote some of this stuff down.
Okay.
Just to remember it. And something that they said was that we concentrated all of the members from mini golf and gone fishing, TC, whatever, into one team, into gone fishing, into the guild that I made just for city fights. And that was our goal, was to beat June, which was not really the case because, like, yeah, sure, they were part of it, but like, the goal wasn't to directly beat June. It was to take all the cities. It was to be the city owners and get that sweet silver that it gives you every day. But yeah, it wasn't. I think they do this a lot. They like to put themselves in the front of the picture and say, "Oh, we're the reason for this," but it's not. It's just to own the objective, and they're standing in the way of it. So we have to push them out of the way and take it. And yeah, back to the point. What was wrong was them saying that I merged guilds or merged players into one guild in order to beat them. But the reason why that's wrong is because I only brought like 2 players, 3 players tops from that mini golf team into the old TC team in order to make a team that I thought could win. In fact, I didn't even think that we would have much success. I just wanted to have fun and do the city fights. And we ended up winning by like 36 points on the first GvG, and I was so happy. I'm like, wow, could we actually, do something with this? Like, there's a lot of synergy here and like a lot of good skill. Like, maybe we could, do more with this. So we would continue to launch. After that big victory, winning 36-0 versus a hugely experienced team in June, hugely experienced in city fights. They at that time, it was quite a while after they had that war with Money Guild, and people were like, "Wow, can anyone even beat these guys?" Like Money Guild in June, like they're just like, how do you get better than that? And so we just did. We just kept trying, and I spent a lot of silver, like gear replacement, out of my own pocket. I spent probably over $1 billion silver. I would say $1.5 billion silver, funding this, and just to keep going. And I say that. I say that as like I know how much these GvGs cost, regearing these costs. It costs over like 200 million silver, like a loss, I would say, just for one GvG loss. So I knew the risks, I knew what I was getting into, but I knew the rewards also. And I mean, it paid off. Thank God it paid off, right? Because like that was a big risk. But anyway, it's the lie that we merged just as a single goal just to beat them is wrong, because I can look at the roster right now. I think I have the roster up here. Let me go to Thetford, and I'm looking at it, and I can only see like I'll say some names: Dexu, Absolve, and Eisen King. We're 3 players from mini golf that I said we're friends with mini golf at this time. Stuff happened later. We can go over that later. But we were friends with mini golf at this time, and because we're 2 like ragtag teams of like GvGers who just let's launch the cities, let's go have fun, let's see what happens. So the mini golf side and the TC side were fighting at the same time, and we're kind of like semi-allies, more like just friends. Which we had like not even a pact. It was like an unwritten rule where we wouldn't launch on each other or like mess with each other's teams, and we just have fun. But we only had 3 players. I'm looking at the list right now. Only 3 players from this that I took from that mini golf roster in order to beat the June team.
So do you think
Which
that
I
maybe
wouldn't-
it's like just salt then that they're throwing your name out there in that situation because you used to run city fights for them and now you're doing it for their opponent and taking them down?
Well, there's even more history there in what you just said, but
Yeah, go tell us more.
I think-
Tell us the history.
yeah.
That's what you're here for.
yeah.
Give the
so
salt.
the salt, there is salt there, and that's the reason why I think that was said, was to make an excuse for why you lost, or why you're still losing. You have to, like in their head, I assume that they're trying to make an excuse for why they're losing, and I guess that's the easiest thing to say. But it's just wrong for my eyes, because this team is what we played with in TC pretty much the whole time. There were some exceptions, but really it was only like three people, and it wasn't that concentrated. It was like the same team. So to get into the history of it, I said before I was in June and stuff, and I got a lot of experience there with the city fights, and stuff happened where I got into like a higher ranked role. It was like a pseudo guild leader role where I was like leading stuff and organizing stuff for like off-season GvGs, maybe some city fights here and there. But I would make the roster. I started to make the roster for the city fight just to help organize, and I wouldn't really help shot call or anything like that in June. I think I was a lot more quiet in there, which is whatever. It's just what I wanted to do to help out. And what ended up happening was I was getting ignored. I was spending a lot of time working for them and doing all this stuff for organizing. And then one day I just got benched from the city team. And I was kind of mad because I put all that work into organizing it, and then we're just not taking me in the team. And there were some excuses made where like, oh, you could have played whatever if you really wanted to. Like, you could have just kicked this person. But I'm not going to turn myself into the bad guy just for that. It made me really mad to a point where I just wanted to leave, because this happened multiple times. This happened, I would say, over 3 times where I helped organize the roster and I helped organize things, and I put myself in the roster because I put the work in, and then I was just ignored. So stuff happened there. I have to admit that I did steal some things after I left. I don't really ever regret doing that, because what I made was a lot better than what would have happened if they had that stuff. I asked to be rewarded. I simply asked for premium, if you can believe it or not, and I was completely ignored in that request.
Premium? How dare
Yeah,
what, you think you're important to the guild?
So I was organizing all this stuff. I wouldn't say I was leaving, but I was organizing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought I deserved some things. I was donating focus. I was doing re-gears for ZVZ. I was pacifying war camps. I was doing everything a guild leader should do. And at that entire time, I believe the guild owned 3 cities, which was like, I don't know, 130 mil a day, something like that at that
It was
time.
quite a bit at the time.
I'm not really sure, but the point is that they had the money to spare. On top of all the siphoned energy they had, on top of all the high tier mats that they had at that point, they couldn't spare 16 mil on premium for some characters. So that made me pretty pissed off, to be honest. And they expected you to just accept it. And so I'm like, I don't really have a choice here. I had access to materials. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to leave in a bang and go do my own thing, because it wasn't right the way I was treated. I took that stuff, I left, I joined TC. It's a very greedy thing looking back at that, what I did, but like I said, I still don't regret it, because those kind of people, they don't learn until you teach them a lesson. And so I had to teach that lesson, that they're not the top dog in this game. They don't deserve what they have, and I'm not going to let that happen. I had to fix this, right? So I spent some time in TC, and I made a lot of friends, and we had the interest of 5v5ing, and I just had the thought of like, why don't we just for fun, why don't we just try the cities and whatever, like I have some experience, like we could do it. And so I thought, it would be like a fun project to do, whatever. Not really a project, but just something fun to do. And so we started doing it. We didn't have that much success. Um, Actually, we did have success at the first fight. I think we took Thetford from Blue Army, I believe, and then Sex with X launched on us, and then we defended it, and then June launched on us, and we even defended it then. So that's when I thought, like, okay, we have some like potential here, so we should like keep going for more. We got a little bit too greedy, not gonna lie. We went for Limhurst, and we lost pretty badly. I guess I can take blame for that because I jumped the gun on that part. But like that's in the past, whatever. We had too many substitutes because people couldn't make it. I didn't do an attendance check in time to get that objective. You learn your lessons, right?
Mistakes are made.
Mistakes
It's
were made.
part of learning. You have to lose a few times to know how badly you want to win.
Yeah, so it's part of the learning process, and that's where you gain experience from those losses and stuff like that. So we owned Thetford for like a week. Then the city fights start picking up, and we end up losing Thetford, I believe, eventually. I think we lost somewhere like 3 times against June, so they beat us pretty hard there, and there's not much else to be said about that. We just lost pretty hard. But then the mini golf thing starts picking up. The city fight scene gets a little more active, and we learn from each other's mistakes, and we just keep gaining experience and experience. Eventually, things went south in TC. In my opinion, the guild leader was RMTing city money, which is a big accusation to make, but the guild leader was very shady at the time, and there was questions of where this money went. Like, where are you spending this money? We need this money for defending
Premium.
city.
He's buying premium for his
He's buying,
girls.
of course.
Yeah.
But there was the question of where the money was going, and it wasn't going to like re-gears for the guild. I can tell you that much. And I don't know. The excuse was made that he was buying battle mounts, but really, how much do 10 silver battle mounts cost? Really, not city money. I'll tell you that. Like,
Okay.
So the question was there of where the money was going. I got pretty annoyed. I got frustrated because I'm leading this thing with not seeing returns from it while we're holding Thetford, and I was okay with it at first because I realized like you need to start somewhere. Your team needs to get it, get their foot in the water, warm up to it. So whatever. I left TC on pretty bad terms with the guild leader, I guess. I mean, I don't really talk to that guy at all, so I don't know him, but really good terms with all the members and like all the officers of those people, like the people that eventually made Elevate. And like they're still my friends now. They're still in the same city team. Those are still the same people. They're still, in my opinion, the best players in the game. The people like Bunny Team, Tamashi, even Thanatos, who's he's a ZvZ Shotcaller, but he even played city fights too, and he helped. He was there the whole way, pretty much too. So he needs recognition too. After TC, we merged. A lot of people left TC. Some people even got kicked. So I had the idea one day. I was fishing one day. I was like, okay, why don't I just we're going fishing. Let's just make the guild go on fishing. And there's even a movie with Joe Pesci. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it's a funny movie. And Donald Glover too is in it, so it's a good movie. But I decided to name the guild after that. We decided to city fight right away, and what happened was that we won every single city fight. From the first city fight, there were obviously some not bumpy roads, but some bumps in the way there, but we just continued to win and win. And I really buckled down, I would say, and really like started to take it more seriously. And I think everyone else did too. Everyone else on the team started to take it more seriously because they realized that we can win. And so, we take Thetford from June. Then we take Bridgewatch against June. I believe June on that one too. And then we took Martlock against June. And I believe that one was a no-show because we were just so strong, and June wasn't. I wouldn't say they weren't playing at the time because they were still active, but they weren't playing as much, I guess. I mean, that's one of their excuses, that they don't ever play the game that much. They use that excuse all the time, which I think it's a super lame excuse. But
the worst excuse.
Yeah, I think that really is disrespectful towards your enemies. you shouldn't. There's no reason to talk like that, right? Like you're just say you did a good job and leave it at that. I don't know, but yeah, we pretty much beat them in three days, 3 wins, and that was the end of them. And then after that, we were sitting on the 3 cities. We were all making good silver. Because what I do is I take 20% to pay myself, 20% to pay for regears, which regears are a lot of money at that time, more than 20%. I'll tell you that much. And then I paid the players 60% of the silver, and I split that 20 ways. That was kind of unheard of at the time of paying players like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think Money Guild may have done that, but not to that extent. But that was one of my goals too in mind, that I always wanted to pay the players over anything else, and put that money into the players' pockets, because what else are you gonna do with it? But anyway, after that, Elevate was formed. All those people in the city team, not all of them, but most of them always had the making their own guild in mind, and that's when they got Momono and Dungeon Realms from Momono from Broke Boys, obviously, and Dungeon Realms he used to be in TC. He joined Blue Army for a time, and then he was actually our enemy in the city fights, but he ended up joining us after, because he wanted to make this guild with his friends. So we made this guild, and we made the decision that the the 3 cities that Gunfish already owned, Thetford, Martlock, and Bridgewatch, would always stay in our control, or stay in my control, in my guild's control. And then we would take the other cities and put that in the guild's control, Caerleon, Lyndhurst, and Fort Sterling. So I thought that deal was really fair. I thought, yeah, sure, whatever. There were some things said, back and forth, whatever, stuff with where the silver should go. There's always that kind of argument whenever there's a lot of money involved. But that stuff got settled, and now we're just riding smooth at this point. Anyway, what happened after that was, we start with the actual enemy of the city team, the people that are fully committed to this and don't just break after 3 losses. Money Guild, the people that will always show up, always have Mercia. Derek, the so-called King of Mercia, whatever, all those titles. That's the final boss of the city team, pretty much. And I say that because they put up a huge fight. Like, fighting them, I think, lasted a month or more even, but they really showed up to every fight. I don't mean that literally. They didn't show up to every fight, because there were some where organization is a little off, so you have to no-show and stuff like that. But we're pretty much dominant from the whole time from there, besides the first launches. I make a joke out of this that Lyndhurst is a cursed city, because every time we've launched on it and expect to win, we always end up losing in like a really horrible fashion, and it's always really funny. But I guess we broke that curse. But it's just
you've been fighting there for a few weeks now and doing fairly well. So
yeah, well, right now we're fighting in
Bridgewatch is what the current fight is for. Yeah,
it's the same timer 20 UTC that we've also fought that once, so it's fair to say that. But yeah, pretty much we fought Final Order for a very long time, and they put up a good fight. Respect to those guys. Sorry things couldn't work out with organization, getting players to take it more seriously, but that just happens, I guess, whatever. So we own the cities for the whole season, pretty much. We ride on that silver to a cozy season win, where we use that silver to fund the whole regear system for Elevate is funded by those cities. Not anymore. We're doing really well financially, I guess, now. During the whole season, our whole flat 8 regear system, 6-2 relics, all that stuff, better than anyone else's regear system in the game. We had the best regear system with the silver that we are so blessed to have. We used that to win the season, pretty much. We used it in other ways too, not just regear. We paid for teams to join, and we paid for we didn't pay for it, but we gave silver so the guild jungle can grow, because we wanted to be allies with these incredibly high skilled players too. Those people in jungle are really good. They're just as good as us, and that's why we want to be allies with them, because we're some of the best players in the game. And I'm even on a crystal team with those people from jungle, because they're just like some of the best players. So why not? And they're just good guys too. They're really nice to talk to. They're understanding people. They're great. But yeah, that was the goal, to win the season, and then jungle became our allies, and then we found some more allies, stuff like that, and everything's going pretty good.
While I have you, I wanted to ask you a question. In the past, there's always been that discussion that also partially led to the removal of the 5 versus 5 territorial control system, where, if you have a dominant team, they just basically default to having everything, more or less, unless they're allied. Do you think that's a problem?
Yeah, I really, looking back at it, I wasn't on board for that change because, I was a GvGer, but looking back at it now, it's like it's a really good decision SBI made because it revitalized the game to a point where there's so many people playing where like peak players, and I think it's more enjoyable too. I think the Crystal League is like a fine replacement for territory GvGs. I think ZVZ is what this game really shines in. And
I mean, I'm sort of going towards you guys owning cities as well, right? Because
yeah,
you are sitting there on top, and a lot of people don't even try because they will just get stomped. And then the question of fairness comes up. Like, should you guys have hundreds of millions of silver a day and others not really having a chance sort of to compete? Is that a fair assessment?
No, yeah, it is. But what I'd like to say to that is we're using it very responsibly. Like we're not just hoarding it and keeping it.
I don't think that matters. Sorry, but
True. Okay, sure. But I guess it's giving up too much power to one team of players, right? And it topples the scales of the entire game. This guild is too powerful because they own the cities. It's the same thing in real life. And we do own it is a lot. And there's other guilds out there that find ways to live without them. So it is a bit of a crutch too. I see a lot of people make the argument of like, wow, this gives too much and over little control, over 20v20 fight. Like that's not fair. Like a castle gives like only 80 million loot and there's way more people involved. But obviously there's more skill. Not obviously, but there's an argument to be made there. But I think there's more skill in a 20v20.
When you limit the number of players and it's a set number of players versus a set number of players, I think you do increase the skill. Absolutely. So you can say that there's more skill involved in a 20v20 than a 50vx.
Yeah, if the devs ever felt like we sway the way of the game too much because of the city money, that's their decision to make if they want to take the cities out. I can't really control that, but I wouldn't really be broken up about it because I love this game either way. It's like I would still play it. I don't really. It would be sad, but like I don't know. That's not really why I play the game. I play for all the other reasons too.
I'd rather see them add more 20v20 content to the game so that players can get the experience of fighting 20v20 and rank themselves up to fighting against you. I think the biggest problem right now is that so few groups get to experience competitive 20v20 outside of the scrim system that really gives them the experience they need to go against somebody who's been doing it for 2 years.
Yeah, I don't think the scrim system is really a good, accurate measurement of like how good you're doing in a 20v20. Simply because you don't lose anything when you die, and I think that really changes people's perspectives when that stuff is being risked. I think that changes everything. So I don't think the scrim is a really vital way of training yourself. Like it has to be in the same environment that you're going to play in. Like it needs to be full death.
It's like Alterac Valley and Albion. It has no point. It's just people running at each other and smacking face until they die and then they come right back. The scrim system does not give an accurate portrayal of what a real 20v20 feels like, what's on the line, and I even believe the cooldown timers are off.
Yeah, the death timers, I think what you're talking about, those are off in scrims for even 5v5 scrims. But yeah, I would love to see more 20v20 content. I think that's an incredibly fun game mode that can easily be expanded upon. I know there used to be 20v20 Hellgates, but those got kind of canceled. I'm not really going to advocate for those, but I would like for other options, like I don't know, maybe city fights in the rest in the black zone, something like that, or anything really. Like that number of players is a sweet spot.
It's an incredibly sweet spot. That 20 to 50 balanced fight is incredible in this game, and I've never experienced anything as fun as the 20v20 city fights, and I haven't gotten to do enough of them. I loved them. But yeah, do you want to give any shout outs to any players before we let you go? Because I just looked at the time and we're
Sure.
almost at an hour here, man. And
Yeah.
from what I understand, you have a lot of players you want to give shout outs to. There are a lot of really great players in Elevate that deserve some airtime.
Yeah, I'll try to go through this quick. Shout out to Arthora. He's my side caller. He's always pretty much always there. So shout out to him. He's done a lot of work too. Shout out to Abibat, one of the best tanks in the game. Shout out to Exion for his crazy stream. He's the craziest mute tank I've ever played with. He's just crazy. Shout out to BCX for being the best camlan. Tamashi, Uraz Chicken, Adora Bubbles for being the best healers that I've ever played with. Dip, that guy is just another crazy guy. I don't know what goes through his head, but he's got it down. I don't know. Shout out to Rockin' Tran for filling in for our Bloodletter role, who I couldn't ask better Bloodletter. That guy's really good. Shout out to Dungeon Realms for being super good on Locust. He really knows how to play Arcane. I don't know, he's really good. NEX for being one of the best Frost players in the game too. He's a solid player. He's just super good. Messia he's in the side team. He's really good in melee DPS. He deserves a lot of credit. Shout out to Bunny Team and Mosa for being the best Galatine clappers in the game and not playing Galatines in city fights. Thank you guys. Shout out to Enchain for just being one of the best range DPS, being a talkative person, just being there. Big EX for also, that's another filler on it's a new person on our city team. Big EX playing the Dawn song, one of the best weapons in the game. Shout out to Geminex for just being Geminex. I don't know, that guy is super good. Shout out to Aram. He's also a really good player. He's just like Engine, he's very talkative. He's very coordinated too. He's a tactical player. He knows good calls to make all the time. Also, shout out to Rebane for being a great substitute on our team. And shout out to Momono for leading the boys every day. You know, that guy's on like multiple timers a day. So shout out to him. He does really good work in ZBZs. Yeah, that's all the shots I want to do. That's pretty much the whole city team.
Do you want to say anything else before we let you go? Do you want to call out the boys in June for not being able to take you down?
Yeah, their coalition isn't really hurting us. So, I mean, good luck to you guys. But I'd like to say thank you to SBI for making this game. You know, it's a very enjoyable game. I don't know. This is like one of my favorite games right now. I don't know what else to say. It's just really well made. You guys are doing a good job. Shout out to Albion TV, Shozen Bogul, Lupac, you guys, Robin Hooders, Tazik, you guys do a great job of casting. You're covering the city fights, and you do great GvG coverage, great GvG coverage. Just good job to you guys, and thank you for all the work you do.
Well, thank you for coming on today and telling us about the city fights and giving us a good bit of history. We really appreciate it, Zerfaxx. It's been a great hour, actually, talking to you. And we'll have to do this again because I feel like you have more to say.
Yeah, there actually is more to say. I'm sorry for talking so much, but yeah, there is more to say, I guess. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much, and we will have to do this again.
Thank you.